I'm Elise Orlowski, a senior video director here at Cramer.
And I'm Trip Underwood, a creative director at Cramer.
And at Cramer, we work with so many incredibly fascinating people from all over multiple industries.
We have so many great conversations, many that are just too good to keep to ourselves. So now we're sharing them with the world.
Right here from Cramer Studios.
This is Pivot Points.
Cut.
Elise, good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Back in the studio.
Yep.
Today on Pivot Points, we're going to be doing something a little bit different.
Switching it up.
Switching it up a little bit.
Pivoting.
Keep pivoting. Keep the audience on their toes. Because we here at Cramer recently held a hybrid experience event.
Which is exciting.
Very exciting.
Not a lot of those this year.
A lot of talk of it, but not a lot of execution.
Yeah.
So what we did is actually put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, and hosted an event that was a live in-person show that was also simultaneously live broadcasted using Bizzabo, which is a virtual platform technology. So it was a way to create a singular event that was then enjoyed in person, at home, on demand, all incorporating different technology strategies to try to make it all work.
Yep. And that event was called Agents of Hybrid. And it was really exciting because our venue was Cramer Studios. So everyone that was on site was like here. There was a lot of people, a lot of buzz, a lot of energy. It was super exciting. So today we actually, partnered with the Bizzabo team. We had them in the studio and had a conversation surrounding that event, which we're actually going to dive into further. But we hope for a lot of the listeners, who attended the event, but if you didn't, be sure to head over to the on-demand experience, which will be in the description below to watch.
You see what we did, and then come and join us again at this part to see what we're talking about. Because the conversation you're about to watch between Elise, myself, some people here at Cramer, and the Bizzabo folks is really a deep dive on everything that we did, the good, the bad.
Like a recap for that event of what we...
But there's a lot of practical information that you can use in terms of what worked, what didn't, what we can do better. And I think it's a really candid look at an event that I'm really proud of.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. And ultimately how to make events much cooler in the future.
Less ugly.
So with that, why don't you enjoy our discussion with the Bizzabo team? Welcome to Agents of Hybrid Part 2. We're coming to you live from Cramer Studios, where just a few weeks ago, we teamed up with our partners at Bizzabo to host a fully hybrid experience, bringing together an in-person audience with thousands of virtual attendees watching at home, giving everyone a real-time example of what the future of events may look like.
And today, we're going to talk to the people who made that experience happen. We'll find out what worked, what could have been done better, and get their perspective on what makes a successful hybrid event. We're also going to hear from Duncan Wardle, former head of innovation and creativity at Disney. Duncan's going to be hosting a hands-on innovation class to help you better understand the impact creative thinking can have for events organizations. And because hybrid events are all about audience interaction, Duncan does have a few questions he'd love to ask you, our at-home audience, using our live polling feature. So if you can please scan the QR code now, we can get that started. Okay, so the first question is, what is your biggest barrier to being innovative at work?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. Next, what do people say when they kill one of your ideas? Ooh, that's a tough one. Yes.
Okay, so question 3. Where are you and what are you doing when you get your best ideas?
Ooh, definitely showering for me.
I'm more of a jogging person. I'm not paying attention to almost getting hit by cars. And finally, question 4. How do you remember that there are 30 days in September?
Ooh, what is the Knuckles thing?
I only know the rhyme.
I don't know what that is.
I'm completely unfamiliar with the Knuckle thing. Okay, so hopefully all your answers are in, and the results of those questions will come up later during Duncan's talk. But now we want to get started and really dive deep into this panel, starting with some introductions. My name's Trip. I'm a creative director here at Cramer, and I am joined by my lovely co-host and fellow creative director, Elise.
Hello. And joining us on stage is Mark Wilson, Executive Creative Director at Cramer, and Devin Cleary, VP of Global Events at Bizzabo. And beaming in live all the way from the mysterious land of New York is Lauren Kerr, the Director of Special Events at Bizzabo. Thanks for making the virtual commute, Lauren.
Oh, no, thanks for having me.
Okay, let's dive right in. This is what people want to talk to about, like things we learned from Agents of Hybrid. If I could start, personally, my biggest learning from Agents was this kind of recognition that hybrid events are about creating two connected but still unique experiences. It's not about trying to be all things to both audiences at once, which is something we're calling hybrid is a spectrum. And the Bizzabo team has done a ton of research on this, so I'm going to throw it to Devin first. Devin, when you see the term hybrid is a spectrum, what does that mean exactly?
Well, first, thanks for having me today. It's amazing to be back in this incredible environment. Let's start with a basic definition of hybrid. For us, it really is a mix of a live in-person event and a virtual event. This is where we're combining the physical and virtual event elements and features and really integrating them together. But hybrid is so beneficial in a lot of different ways. It offers attendees the flexibility of participating in their preferred format. And for all of you event profs today, I'm sure you can confirm this, it helps us expand both our reach and our inclusiveness around the event strategy. But to answer your question, the above definition is a really singular viewpoint. Hybrid means any mix of ideas, models, and designs. And not just this sort of, I would say, preconceived notion or buzzword that it has to be a 50% virtual event with a 50% in physical audience. Hybrid means anything to everyone, no matter what organizers are trying to create. It's what they want it to mean for themselves. So at Bizzabo, we believe that there is a spectrum. So today, what I wanted to do was really synthesize this down into some actionable learnings and really try to organize this into 4 major models of hybrid to really prove this hypothesis that it's not one size fits all. So the first, as a deep dive, is what we're calling 2 simultaneous events. This is where you actually have both an in-person event integrated with a virtual event. And what we're seeing is concurrent networking and content streaming happening at the same time. Now, a pro of this is you actually are able to bring your audiences together, and from a sponsorship perspective is one use case, you're able to expand that reach and maximize the visibility and the viewership. One of the cons, or again, maybe a different way to phrase that, is just, one thing you have to be mindful of is how expensive that can run you. You really are co-creating and producing 2 simultaneous events into one. So you really want to be mindful of that and the amount of time. And Lauren's going to talk a little bit about this from her perspective. But again, as event organizers, we always need more time or could always use more time in the strategy, ideation, and planning sessions. So again, making sure you have the appropriate amount and SLA to effectively deliver. The second and third options both also have a virtual event and a physical event kind of integrated. But the second option we're calling is a delayed event. And that is where you really have a live sort of programming for the in-person audience. And then your secondary component is a delayed sort of maybe next day, a week later, whatever your time frame would look like. And it's more of an on-demand package for your virtual audience. So you might have a combination of Simulive, you might have other elements that you bring forward, but it is sort of a later production or a later consumption for your online audience. And with that, a pro is that you really get to focus on one event at a time. And I know, trust me, being an event organizer, that is a dream come true in this new era. The second piece to this on sort of the con perspective is, are you going to be able to really engage your virtual audience? We've really learned as a best practice and a lesson already, if you are not going to guide and provide live, real content and engagement, you run the risk of having a significant drop off from a registration to a conversion of attendance. So you have to be really, really careful about that. The third model is a live studio audience. This is where you actually bring your in-person groups together and you're trying to replicate, very similar to sort of a high production broadcast. This could be a live TV show, if sort of to, again, help you understand what I'm trying to convey today on behalf of the panel. And the pro of this is the energy level. You can really target strategic accounts, high-level prospects, really give them that white glove and personalized experience. But the con is that your virtual audience, how are they going to feel that energy? How are they going to be able to really tap into all of the excitement and all of the kind of personalized experiences and content syndication that you're trying to deliver through their digital devices? So you really have to weigh the pros and cons on that. But if you are going to be moving forward with a hybrid strategy where in-person is the first priority, this could be a great option for you to consider moving forward. And the final option is what we're calling speaker only. This is where you take your entire content framework and all of your presenters, whether they're your employees, whether they're external, your thought leaders, your celebrity presenters, and you bring them all to one centralized location where you can control the messaging, the look and feel. And that's really the pro, is the standardization of content so everyone gets familiar and you're making sure that the brand and the look and feel is represented incredibly well. The negative is, again, you have a complete virtual audience. So one trend alert, okay, trend alert everyone. We've heard of this hub and spoke model for many years. We've all tested and piloted this, but I want to employ all of you today to consider integrating that as part of your speaker-only model, because you can actually create satellite hubs where you're regionalizing, maybe even partnering with your field marketing organization, and this can finally bridge that gap of friction or awkwardness between an event leader and a field marketing leader, and you can actually engage local user groups, customers, or prospects, bringing them together and allowing everyone to consume in a real environment while you still have the presenters controlled in a studio environment or audience metric. And this is, again, something that we did incredibly well with Cramer for Agents of Hybrid. But the one takeaway, knowing all of those models right now, is that there are a lot of options when it comes to events and event technology. And your attendees and your sponsors need to be dictating to you organizers listening today what you should be producing. Remind yourselves and cater to the needs of your community. And that's everything from, do you need more tech? Do you need less content, more interactivity? At Bizzabo and with Cramer's partnership, we did a couple different options. We asked questions during the registration process, so as we were planning, we can make adjustments and really cater on the content to ensure it delivered and provided the actionable insights we were hoping to achieve. I also recommend tapping in through your survey and really some of your brand evangelists or individuals who are diehard alumni who come time and time again to your different programs. Make sure you ask them for their input. Create focus sessions. There's so many ways in which you could better extract those insights to just really pull off an exceptional event experience. Now, tying this all back to Agents of Hybrid, we select, no surprise, the first model, which was the 2 simultaneous events model. It's the most well-known, probably the most, I would say, typical when we think about those buzzwords, the first things that kind of come to mind. And I want to make sure that all of you walk away today, and something that we really need to focus on moving forward and a lesson learned is really ensuring that we prioritize both audiences and we personalize the experience for the online viewer as well as the in-person group. We witness different human behaviors by testing a lot of different things, which we're going to get to later in the program. But I want to make sure that we're balancing the resources and we're really talking about some of those challenges. But the final statement into this question right now is I want to ask each of you to think about experience mapping with your teams. This is my #1 tip for that first lesson. I really think you should sit down, whether it's a whiteboard, a virtual tool online with your teams if they're remote, and really, again, document all the different personas coming to your event. And not even from the day they walk into the event or experience or log into the platform, but making sure from the number of emails you're sending, to the communications you're delivering, to the type of content, all of that's gonna give you a full blueprint, and documenting that is a forcing function to ensure that you have a really well thought out strategy that is going to deliver time and time again.
And when it comes to experience, do you have any thoughts on that, Mark?
I'm still trying to recover from all the information that Devin has just given us.
I'm very passionate.
That was a fire hose, man. That was awesome. So I have a couple of thoughts, but I just wanted to build on a couple of things that you said, because I think every time we do this, we learned a lot. In doing the program with all of you amazing people at Bizzabo, we learned a lot. You talked about the different models, and I think we've had great conversation about it. I kind of want to go back to one that you talked about, which is hub and spoke. I don't know if any of you had the chance to see our Rich Sturcio's presentation on planning, but we were just talking before the broadcast about how even the hub and spoke model is evolving, right? And so we've come to look at hub and spoke as a matrix, and you kind of talked about it, but because of the technology and the options that we have, hub and spoke people tend to think like, well, there's one main broadcast center and then it goes off and maybe I have viewing parties. Well, think about it more dimensionally than that. Like, we can connect all those points so that you're either providing content from any of those points, you may be having dialogue back and forth between two of those points that everybody sees, and clearly we can bring in speakers from anywhere, content can come from anywhere. So the hub and spoke model is not just this and arms, it's like, think about it as a matrix with points all over the matrix, and content or audiences can be traveling back and forth on that matrix. And I think, when you said hybrid means everything to everybody, or anything to everybody, or everything to anybody, I don't know, one of those things.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely true, because it has so many different meanings, and that's okay. If you start with your final tip, which is doing the journey mapping, then it's gotten so much easier to facilitate any of those models and really connect people and do it in real time.
But I think, to piggyback on that, one of the foundations of that is having talent or content that's going to translate for all those audiences. Wherever you see them within the spectrum, the matrix, the terminology, there has to be some universals. And I think that was one of the learnings we had was with some of the people we worked with for the show, because I thought they translated both well. As someone who watched live and then also saw the on-demand, similar to the virtual one, is Katie did really well, I think, as a host.
Katie wasn't, so, it's a great point, Trip. Thanks for bringing it up. Having a really strong MC, and if you're lucky enough to have somebody inside your organization, that's awesome. Highly recommend hiring somebody. Like, Katie was amazing. Like, Bizzabo brought Katie to the table. I hadn't met her before. She was awesome, because of her energy and her knowledge and her overall sort of personality. I mean, she's small, but her personality on camera is so big, and there's so much energy that comes out of her. But she does multiple purposes. She creates energy, but she connects the dots.
Yeah.
She's a friendly face for you to look at every time. She's your element of continuity from a camera and red thread standpoint. But she's really, really smart, and she's also able to connect the dots for the audience and really make the whole program make sense. Because one of the conversations that we had talked about often is we don't want to lose the virtual audience in the process of entertaining the venue audience. Well, having a host really goes a long way toward doing that, because she kind of catered to that virtual audience.
Yeah, Katie was great. And as someone who personally works behind the scenes a lot and isn't in front of camera, except not today, I can't stress enough how important it is to have talent that really translates well, both live and virtually, for those audiences. And that means finding speakers or performers who are willing to try new things and work closely with a production team, which takes us to our second learning, which is production matters. Really, really matters. And Lauren, I know this is a point that you feel really strongly about. Could you tell us about production and the role it plays to make a hybrid event successful?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, without the right production value, you're left with a glorified conference call. So partnering with the right production company was everything. The model we chose, as Devin mentioned, we did it because it gained the most insight from an experimental lens. The criteria we used in selecting a partner was, we needed some expertise with really great quality broadcast and technical expertise. Communication is going to be a huge component. You get to know each other very well. As we know, we're on the phone constantly every week. And you also just want to know they have a great proven track record with great customer referrals, which, was how we ended up with you. Production also starts really early. You don't just do the virtual rehearsals, which we know. one of the things we probably should have even looked at more was spending more time on the hybrid mock-ups. It was something new for us. Like literally we're doing that here today with me being virtual. And we definitely recommend, 2 weeks a full 2 weeks prior to the event for as much of a run through as you can. And definitely, 2 to 3 days prior on site. Another thing is practice isn't just what's happening on screen. You've got to pressure test your product. So we recommend having 1 to 2 quality assurance people from support or sales engineers or your customer success representative check everything. And actually, one thing we would do again is probably create an entirely mock event with your tech stack, maybe 2 weeks in advance, and run through it start to finish, because you'll see where the weaknesses are, where any concerns are, and what's going well, and test this out with your employees as a sample. And then finally, the last piece of production is honestly, going through the run of show on site compared to virtual. You nearly forgot you had to plan for breaks on site to physically allow people to move, but then keeping the virtual audience engaged. So that was where Katie was fantastic with giving instructions, but maybe you add in session recaps there or other pieces of information to keep the virtual audience engaged. And on site, we forgot at times you have to tell people, out of the back of the room, take a right, where to go, what the option is. And because we had under 100, it worked out great. But especially as you look at larger audiences on site, again, it's something definitely to remember.
Good point.
Yeah, that's a great.
And Mark, I know you had a couple of extra thoughts on that, so I'll give you the floor again.
Production master.
Sure, I'll try to keep it quick, but I think, it starts with planning, starts with having the right partnership. I think, Lauren, you and your team were really amazing in helping us create a good working chemistry, both in the pre-production process as well as on site, and that's important. You have differences, but you work them out. We respect each other a lot. We've been working with each other for a long time, and that's really critical. We talked a little bit about the rehearsal component. You mentioned that. That live walkthrough that we did at the top of the show was awesome, and it was awesome because we did it, 5 or 6 times probably. We rehearsed it a lot of times. We were debating whether or not we should do it live or whether we should do it as a pre-record, because it has plenty of problems that go along with it. But other than a little bit of a delay problem at the very top of the show, everything was fantastic. And that was really, truly because of all the rehearsals that we did. So having the right planning, the right partnership, the right chemistry, and then rehearsal is my favorite word. Don't ever cut out your rehearsals. If I ever work with you, rehearse. Don't cut out your rehearsal time. It's critical, is a really critical component. And then, of course, the platform itself, is also really critical. I love what you just said, too, about doing a mock event a couple weeks ahead of time, and going through everything and pressure testing, seeing what breaks, because things always break. There's always problems.
Always.
But that's okay. That's the world we live in, and that's what we do. We're here to make it run smoothly, manage the chaos, and really deliver.
And that's not unique to hybrid at all either.
No.
Things are going to go wrong.
All the time. Life.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I think one of the big things I'm kind of hearing and picking up what you guys are saying is this, there's lots of planning, there's lots of rethinking. And then for me, something I took away from all this is that hybrid kind of required all this innovative, outside the box thinking, and then I had to spend almost as much time taking those ideas and then figuring out how to make them work, right? Because a great idea that isn't executable actually isn't really a great idea at all. So what I liked about this event is that it kind of encouraged me and the team I worked with to think differently up front, while always being mindful of some of the limitations we had to work with within our space, because our offices and studios are fantastic, but they're not traditional event spaces. Yep. So that created, some concerns and some guardrails, which I thought was really fun to think about, but be mindful for us, which takes us to lesson 3, and this is the idea of getting bold and embracing the unknown. Cramer side, we tried some things that really pushed us out of our comfort zone. Like Mark said, that walk-up, there was talk of killing it multiple times, but we kept it in because we liked it. It was complicated, but we knew in the end it'd be worth it. And then Devin, on the Bizzabo side, you guys really doubled down on this get bold and embrace the unknown idea. Your team brought all kinds of cool tech, big thinking. There were the robots running around. There was the Zeppy blimp for a while. It kind of felt like a Star Wars set. There were so many people interacting with gadgets and robots.
George Lucas
Exactly.
right now?
Just curious to hear your thoughts on some of the thinking behind using tech that was, I think, beta testing for some of these. If I'm not
That's
pulling back
correct,
the
yeah.
curtain. Okay. Thought behind using beta testing tech in a live environment like that, and some of the learnings you took from it.
What I'd like to focus on right now is really one of the biggest trends we saw come out of the pandemic, and I know that we're not even over that yet, but one thing that a lot of event organizers can likely shake their heads or raise their hands today is struggling with sort of the offering enhanced networking opportunities and that quality engagement that we so crave to make sure that we were either trying to replicate or realize that it wasn't possible going to the virtual landscape. I know I've experienced that. My team has had challenges with that in the past as well. But Agents of Hybrid was really a test bed for us, and we looked at it and framed it in that reference. We wanted to make sure that everyone knew coming to this event, it was a true live hybrid experiment, and it was important for us to be truly authentic. You know, we wanted to make sure that if something didn't work out, that was okay, and we communicated that to our entire extensive teams. We also wanted to make sure that we tried to leverage innovative technologies and really looking outside sort of our sphere of comfort to really create unified experiences and see how human behavior was going to engage with those technologies so we could really, again, dissect those learnings and bring them to all of you today. So one thing I would like to really focus on is maybe sharing the top 3, some of the demos that I really feel like had the most impact or lessons that you can learn yourself. Number 1 was a company called One Technology. They donated 5+ sort of these mobile robots where we actually allowed the virtual attendee, some of you, again, that are on this call today or on this broadcast have probably participated, you had the ability to control these robots on site for 30 minutes. We got the idea because last year in Fashion Week, they actually leveraged a series of robots for a couple high fashion brands, and it really allowed people to feel like they were in the action. They could control, they could move the cameras, they could see the different points of view, and that's what really inspired us. So again, trend alert, look outside your industry to find inspiration that you can bring to your own event strategy. But those robots, pros and cons real quick. Number 1, the pro was people really felt like they were part of the action and they were driving the control. A lot of virtual audiences don't feel like they're in control and they're just following along, or they're being spoken to versus being spoken with. So these robots allowed that connection point to really come together. The con was you don't have a 360 view. So if I'm doot, 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 I don't really know what's happening around me. Am I interrupting a private conversation? Is there a session happening around the corner? And again, my noise, my volume is going to impact that. So just be mindful of that moving forward. And again, more attendee communication and training in advance would have served us well.
I didn't realize that they were controlling from home.
100% controlling
I thought
from
that
home.
was someone on site was driving around.
No.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
That's awesome.
they used their keyboard and their mouse pads, and they had full autonomy control, the whole
really
9
cool.
yards.
Oh, that is awesome.
Can I just throw out another
Yes.
point, which is, so we've done other robot experiences, and for all you naysayers out there, the reason it works is because people self-select. I'm
Yes.
holding up my hand. I want to do this. I want to drive. This is really
point.
cool. I want to do it.
100%.
It's not for everybody, and you're not going to get everybody to do it, and that's okay.
Yes.
I mean, just let people self-identify. Let them drive if they want to drive, and if they don't want to, that's okay. Move on.
100%. The second profile that I'll share is the Zeppy meeting a helium balloons. So one of my recommendations to all of you event profs is there is hungry startups out there that have incredible technology and they are looking to partner with organizers. This is your chance to get at no cost technology to try out at your events and really reinforce the innovative and the futuristic approaches that you want your event to be known for from a brand attributes perspective. So that helium company had a giant, and it almost looked like a hot air balloon, where virtual attendees could broadcast in, and it would be a life-size replication of that virtual attendee, and they can engage one-on-one with our in-person audience. And it also worked out incredibly well. We had great feedback that, again, you're at eye level. It wasn't an awkward, like you're trying to take a mobile phone device or an iPad and bring that to someone. So it really was a very realistic recreation that I would, again, really share with all of you to consider the art of the possible moving forward. And the final was what we called trend boxes. So during the behind the scenes kind of field trip or tour that you all got at the onset of Agents of Hybrid, Cramer did an amazing job working with us on an experiential landscape to create thematic different spaces. We had sustainability, we had DE&I, things that were really passionate about us, but also the industry at large. And those boxes, we tried to allow live feeds where virtual attendees could beam in, and if a physical audience member was there, they could actually potentially form a match, discuss that topic, really dive deeper into these different trends in the events business. I will say it worked well. I don't think it worked amazing, and I think the in-person experience was much more energized and exciting and interactive than the virtual. So something we're going to go back to for part 3 maybe of AOH next year and really try to recreate and really iterate on top of. But the final point that I will say is when we're trying all these experimental kind of technologies, it's so important to make sure that you're not overshooting your budget and really being mindful of where you're investing your dollars. So we really made the conscious decision to allocate certain line items and prioritize those in the event budget, which is why we wanted to showcase and really transform Cramer Studios to give you that that sort of transition or that handoff where you could really leverage existing office spaces if you're doing a remote workforce and really use those as the backdrops for your venue so you're not spending all that money on the space itself, but can really invest in the attendee experience, which is the most important takeaway from today's discussion.
Yeah, I think another thing, I mean, kind of back to your point about being live.
Yeah.
Embracing live is such a huge thing. I mean, you don't really get, I mean, even now we're live, right? And you don't get that energy unless it's live. And we definitely had a ton of energy in the studio also because the whole studio was full of attendees.
It was amazing.
And we also decided very early in the planning process that we wanted this show, Agents of Hybrid, to be live. Because again, there's just an energy and a spark that you can't create without it. And Mark, you've been doing live and now virtual events for so many years.
So many years, Elise.
A lot of emphasis
So
on
many years.
I don't know what CDs are, but Mark does. But I mean, from your perspective, what is the secret sauce, to doing a live broadcast and a live show like at the same time?
Is it complicated? It is complicated, but put away all your fears. I think what we bring to the party, and again, the combination of what we're doing, Bizzabo's doing, is the confidence in live. It used to be like you're probably afraid that if I do this live, what if something breaks? What if something goes wrong? And I would say, at the very beginning of the pandemic, when a lot of clients were still new to this, and things were a little bit, we had little problems here and there. Yeah, but I think what we've done here at Cramer, and I know what others have done, is we've really created foundations so that we've taken the risk out of it. So we can do live as easily for a broadcast as we can do live on stage. And I think we've taken a lot of that risk out of it. And I want to touch very quickly on the point that I'm going to treat this like a political debate. I would like to speak to something that my opponent, no, not my opponent, but my running mate, I guess, talked to earlier, which is, big, bold is really important. You guys came up with a lot of ideas. We work together on a lot of stuff. Here's my main message, which is you get a free pass this year.
Yep.
You get a free pass. People don't know what to expect, but I will tell you they expect a lot. So we can't come back to 21, the rest of 21, 22 with the same old, because it's not going to fly. I mean, people have been waiting a long time to do a combination of virtual and in-person, so you better bring it. And don't forget, you can't do anything wrong. You get a free pass. They don't know what to expect.
It's unestablished.
It's unestablished, so surprise them. Surprise them.
Wild West. Lauren, you and I talked a little bit about this. Just curious to hear your thoughts on going live. I know a little hesitant at first, but.
Oh yeah, I mean, first it was so much fun to be back in action on site and watch it happen live. So we honestly felt it gave the experience more credibility for the audience at home and hopefully let them feel more engaged. I know Mark said it is so much more planning and you have one shot, but hopefully we do get a free pass for that for this year. One of the recommendations is just always triple checking your technology, connect it to the platform. We try to be creative. We sacrificed quality in one of the networking hubs because we hadn't went through that over and over again. It was new. But I do think that the last 12 months, it's acceptable to be simu-live and recorded. But now you really want to give your attendees a reason to be there and take time out of their day. And honestly, I just feel like live is the way to do that.
Yeah, you're putting a stake in the ground. We're asking a lot from our audience to take time out of their day to do whatever. Sure. we got to put ourselves out there a little bit too, and I think live is a way to do that. Okay, so I'm looking at speaking of live, I'm looking at my show clock over there, and it's starting to wind down. So we got to wrap this up, but our final lesson is super important, so I want to make sure we give it the time it deserves. And that is this concept of you need to acknowledge the complexity. As we said up top, hybrid events in a lot of cases can be two events that are intertwined. Two events can mean twice the planning and in some cases twice the investment.
Yep.
So if you're spending that much time and money, you have to be really committed to this idea from the get-go, and you need full buy-in from all your stakeholders, be that internally, externally, all that. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Lauren, real quick, because you were one of our main planners and someone dealing with a lot of that complexity, you and Ashley on our side. What are your thoughts on acknowledging complexity, and how do you navigate that?
How do you squeeze this into 4 minutes? I don't know, but honestly, the biggest thing is you're planning for the unknown. Doing hybrid right takes more time, more planning, potentially more expense. You know, the formats we talked about earlier, what are the benefits of them? Is that suitable for your attendees? What do they need to get out of it? Where are you looking to get out of it? So just make sure you have all of those internal discussions before you kick things off. Even look at your staffing capabilities. Just make sure you know all of this from the journey from day one, and then you're all in. On the speaker side, we decided very early we wanted to try to have 50% on site, 50% virtual, so that it truly was a hybrid mixture of those taking part as well. One of the things, though, I would say we underestimate it is elements of facilitation. So over communicate going in everything. We'll be doing it going forward. Where to virtually go next on your screen, where to move in the venue, removing virtual entry and exit points. And like one way we even did that literally a few days before is combining some sessions in so that it just flowed and people didn't have a reason to leave the agenda to come back in and tries to keep, and it worked. It kept them engaged for longer. Also in the facilitation point, networking. We have been hidden away for 12 months to 18 months, and socializing with new people can be nearly tough again. So you can't make assumptions of human behavior after the year we've had. You have to try and give them prompts or boosts of confidence. And so people are glued to their phones. So we need to provide more hand-holding and reconnecting networking sessions going forward as well. But we were honest about it all. We knew this when we mapped out the journey from day one. I'm so thankful for the partnership we had. We did this in 10 weeks. I wouldn't advise anyone to do it in less than 12. We covered 17 tool sessions, 8 networking, 7 interactive, 32 speakers and 3 forms of keynotes. The great thing was, I think the time frame over 2 days, 3 hours of content over 2 days worked very well. We did roughly 40 minutes for most sessions, and actually some of the analysis we've done already is that 25 to 30 minutes is where you get the highest engagement. So that's a model we're going to implement going forward. Mm-hmm. But it was really exciting to just explore this. I think hybrid at the end of the day is a term to just create structure and common understanding for an industry amidst all of the change. And labels are just necessary to help guide people and help them gain confidence. But I definitely have to say I'm really looking forward till we just call them events again, whenever that will be in the future. Yeah,
break down the walls between the two audiences and really start thinking of everything at once, because that's the way it's going.
Absolutely. And I don't think anyone here could say that this event wasn't complex and that it was simple.
But Elise, if I could just make one more statement too, is when we look at all this analysis post-event, okay? We had one very specific question, especially for the virtual audience in the post-survey. We asked them, because of that hybrid integration, so integrating those physical in-person with the virtual event experiences and features, what did we see? Did that impact them negatively? No difference at all, and positively. And I will tell you, 38.7% of our audience said, because you had hybrid elements that were integrated, it actually increased the positive experience we had as a result of the event. So it's just something to really consider going forward, that it does make an impact on your NPS score and everything else you evaluate as event organizers.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And, ultimately it just leads to a lot more opportunity to be creative, opportunity to have new ideas, and opportunity to reach more audiences in a beneficial way. So That's great.
We do want to take time to look at a few of the Q&A questions that we received during the event. Elise, I believe you have them called out. Throw it to Elise.
So first, we're going to hear a question from Dora. who asked, and I'm going to kick this over to Lauren, how many people attended virtually versus physically? And what was the overall CS today and feedback, especially comparing feedback from virtual to physical attendees? Lauren, do you have any thoughts on that?
It's a lot.
Oh, yes.
A lot of questions.
Okay. So we had over 5,000 registered. We had 1,600 tune in live. We had about 80 on site. And we had 300 already watch the event on demand. So just our internal goals, like we aim for a CSAT score of 80. We got 82. On our NPS score was 36 and our goal was 35. So we were very, very happy with that. Just some points we've already gathered back from the surveys and feedback was, so on site, they felt curious, they felt excited, they felt like we really catered to their experience, and even things from individually wrapped lunches, so no one had to go to a buffet. We had sustainable and creative swag. And then even like our contactless check-in, which Bizzabo provides, is all part of the safety measures, as well as the wristbands we provided, so that they can literally wear their comfort level when they're engaging with other attendees. And then for them, they got to see everything in action behind the scenes and got a tour of the studios as well. But we do know that we need more directionals needed for the on-site piece going forward. And then just a couple points in virtual. We need to be better at providing creative ways of event updates. So we hope we did that with the walkthrough with Katie, because the feedback from that was honestly some of the best, where they felt immersed and a part of it. But we really need to take that and make more of that unique kind of content. And then one other piece was in our breakouts. The interact rooms allowed some of the virtual audience members to actually turn on their microphone, turn on their camera, come on stage and engage with speakers. But we also know that we need to better educate attendees how to actually use that going forward, with plenty of explanations in advance so that they can utilize that more. So that was just some of the comments we've heard back from.
That's awesome. And feedback's always great, because I think, because this is not one of the first hybrid events, or like our kind of first shot at it, it's always good to get feedback and be able to then figure out how to fix it for the future. Our next question is from Anonymous. But what was the cost of hosting the event with live broadcasting? Mark, do you have any thoughts on that?
So there's a lot of ways to think about it. One of the questions we get is like, how do we estimate it? What's it going to cost? And it's very much like doing a show at a venue. There are just a lot of variables, but there are set costs. So when you look at a facility like this, there's a cost to rent the studio. There's a cost for the crew, our amazing crew, who's all behind camera, who's in our hub. So there's crew costs, there's facility costs, there's gear, and then it's the usual sort of thought process about where do we want to spend our money. Like, for instance, we added a jib to make it feel like a really fun live environment. So there are lots of decisions to make. I would just say it's pretty quick and easy for us to create estimates for that kind of stuff, because the costs are pretty well established.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't add that much more. I think from our perspective it's going back to kind of the construct of your budget. You're always going to have limitations, whether it's the timeline, whether it's the actual program spend you can invest. My only recommendations is really try to think creatively outside the box. So as I mentioned earlier, when we tried to engage with startups with really innovative technology for their brand exposure and the ability to do really live market testing, we did not really have to cover a substantial fee. So there's really ways to sort of give and take. The other example is really, again, looking at your venues and making sure that you're really investing the core budget into that production so it really does become high quality. And then again, making sure you're not sacrificing the overall holistic experience, but again, just really trying to prioritize and align as a holistic business what is the most important thing to focus on, not only from a resource, but also from a dollars perspective.
To your point, to get creative, we saved on venue expense because we used Cramer's venue, which freed up budget for other things. So that's something to think of as you go forward, depending on what your balance of audience is thinking of non-traditional venues, and the money you save in that can go back into production elements, can go into speaker, it can all be reallocated, because the budget stuff is hybrid, just like the spectrum. Nothing is set in stone anymore.
Yeah, and my other feedback is don't let yourself get overwhelmed by this. Really make the events what work for you, knowing the goals, knowing the audience that you have. It's really important that you have a slew of options based on those models that we shared today, and each of those come with a different association or assumption around budget.
No, that's great. That's awesome. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions. I know we have a lot of questions from you, so we'll definitely be following up with more content and be able to, answer those questions in later follow-up content. And please let us know that the panel presentations from today will be available on demand within 24 hours, so you can rewatch if you like or share it with a colleague who couldn't watch it live. You'll also be receiving a digital hybrid toolkit, which is super exciting, with insights and perspectives on making hybrid work for you. So keep an eye on that for your inbox and the on-demand content link for additional thinkings on these topics. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Awesome. Well, we hope you enjoyed that conversation. Definitely a little different than we usually do, but definitely as exciting and insightful.
Worthwhile. That's it. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Take care, everyone.
See you.